Grant, one question that always seems to pop up is, we've got a lot of people that are very charitable before retirement. And I know that after retirement, there's some great strategies that can be put in place that have huge tax advantages to them as well. Can you touch a little bit on some different strategies in retirement and charitable giving?
Yeah, absolutely, Brooks. Yeah, I think when it comes to charitable giving in retirement, cash should not be the first option. It may be a good option, but it shouldn't be the first without any forethought into strategy. You know, gifting appreciated stock is oftentimes a good thing to look at. Going through your portfolio, if you have positions in there that have, significant appreciation, they have a large unrealized gain, that could be a great source to tap. You can gift shares in kind. You can gift the stock in kind to charity. When the charitable organization receives that stock, they can sell it. Being tax exempt, they won't pay taxes on that unrealized gain, whereas you would have. And then you can keep that cash that you planned to give and use that for your living expenses and have no unrealized gain on that. Whereas if you had to sell the stock to live on to fund your living expenses, you would have been taxed on it. There are some restrictions. You can only deduct up to a certain percent of your adjusted gross income when you give stock in kind. So it is still important to ask your CPA or a qualified advisor that question of, is cash or appreciated stock a better gift? But it's definitely not a strategy that should go overlooked.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's a great strategy for anyone that might have a concentration risk of too much of one exposure in one certain stock or one certain position and never truly been able to get out of it because the tax consequences of selling it were too great. But if I'm already in a charitable position, that's a great excuse to say, hey, one, I'm going to be able to get rid of this, and I was going to do it anyway for whatever value they determine. I'm not going to pay taxes on it. Neither is the organization that's receiving it. And not only that, I have a chance of getting a tax deduction for that as well.
Absolutely. I think, in looking at options for charitable giving, you have cash donations, you have donating stock in kind. Donor advised funds are a great way to get, significant deductions in one year, get some tax deferred, tax free growth on the investments while they're in the donor advised fund, and then be able to support the organizations that you love, over a long period of
Hmm.
time. But would you, for a moment, talk about another way to give charitably from when you hit that required beginning date in your IRA?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the bigger things that we talk to clients about that are in a charitable giving position, and they're constantly looking for better ways to do this is, going back to a point that we've made several times of the amount of money that's in a pre-tax environment. You take that money out, it's taxed at ordinary income tax rates, and at one point or another, you're going to be required to take it out whether you like to or not. Well, after you've reached 70 and a half, you have the ability to do what's called a QCD, or a qualified charitable deduction or distribution. So via these qualified charitable distributions, I'm able to take a distribution out of my IRA, but instead of it coming to my personal account, it goes to the charity of my choice. And this is good for two reasons. One, it satisfies your RMD requirement when you actually hit that age. But two, especially in this tax legislation that we're in, had I given to cash, it's going to go and be put on a limitation schedule. So if I give that cash, I'm subject to 60% of my adjusted gross income in a limitation. And with the Trump tax cuts that happened in 2018, my standard deduction is so high that I'm probably not going to realize that charitable giving anyway. So the best way to do it is through a QCD, because now I'm taking out my RMD that was once subject to ordinary income taxes, but by doing the QCD, I've now adjusted down the taxable amount of that distribution down by what I gave in charitable giving. That's not subject to any limitations whatsoever. So that cash limitation that I had by just writing a check versus giving the distribution straight out of my IRA after 70 and a half, not only has fulfilled my RMD requirement, but now I'm not even paying taxes on that.
Difference in an exclusion and a deduction,
Correct.
right? And I think qualified charitable distributions are limited to 100,000 a year.
Yes.
Is that about right? Yeah,
Yep.
definitely a good thing to consult with your CPA on. But I think between cash, donor advised funds, gifting stock in kind, and qualified charitable distributions, there are a lot of good options out there to give to the organizations that you love, to charity in a tax efficient way.
Yeah, and just to hit one more time, if there is a limitation on the QCD. However, if I'm going to reach $100,000 limit, then it's probably a good situation in order to a good situation in which I would want to establish a donor advised fund at that level. Maybe I don't know where I want that full $100,000 to go that year, but now I've established a fund to where I get the tax deduction that year and I have time to decide on how that's going to be dispersed out.
It's a great idea.